Good afternoon from deep inside a hidden bunker inside the United States Embassy in Lima, Peru. This is the RELO Andes monthly webinar. My name is Rob O'Leary. I am the new fellow here in Lima. I'm also here with Lisa Wakefield. She is the other new fellow, ESL fellow here in Lima, in Peru. And we will be with you over the next 10 months. And we're very excited to be taking over this webinar slot, presenting some of our own, we feel, very good ideas, and those of our colleagues as well. And we're very excited to have you listening in for the first time. So we'll ask you please to be kind, please to be gentle with us, as this is our first time doing this. This is all very new. But we feel that we will be getting the hang of it very quickly. So for those of you who do not know, first time like I am here, RELO Andes webinars come by every month, different subjects on teaching and learning and skills that you can use in the classroom. As you can see, if you one of our websites here is at RELO's Andes, americanenglish.state.gov. We have some more information there, so feel free to look at that, but not right now since we are actually going on with our webinar. And as I said earlier, oh, that's me, Rob O'Leary, and that is my email address. If there's any questions, anyone has any questions after or anything else you'd like to know, please feel free to write to me at that address. Just very quickly about myself, like I said, I am the new ESL fellow here in Lima, Peru. Before this, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Ukraine on 2 separate occasions, once 20 years ago, and recently I just finished another assignment training teachers out in Zhytomyr, Ukraine for the last 2 years. So very excited to be here. So without further ado, let us move on. So today we will be talking about some issues in the classroom and how we can kind of go around these issues, how we can have some solutions to some things that might be difficult for our students and for us as teachers. Today we will be discussing pre-reading techniques. So I want you to get back into your time machine, and I want you to think about your school days. And how many of you read a story or a poem in class? It does not necessarily have to be in English, and you did not understand what that story or poem was about. Not necessarily about the language, just about why you were reading it, what was the themes, what are the ideas involved in that. So what are some of those reasons why you did not connect with that story or poem? And if anyone would like to write in right now, and tell me why you did not connect in to that story that you were reading when you were maybe back in grammar school or back in secondary school. While we're waiting, let us kind of move magically forward, and I'll tell you a little story. I will tell you the story of Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. This is a story that I was required to read back when I was in the 9th grade in secondary school, 1987. Pretty far back, Notre Dame High School, Utica, New York. As I read over that, as I read the book, I realized there was really no reason given for reading the story. The teacher did not give me very much information about it, or any of the students' information. I had very little background on the author or the time period. I also didn't learn a heck of a lot of new vocabulary, and there wasn't a whole lot to gain the interest of the students in the classrooms. So if you see the picture there, that's Heathcliff there, and he looks like he's in some emotional pain. I felt more pain than he did having to read that book, believe me. And I knew even back then that it could be different. So Lisa, did we have any responses at all? Okay, so there was very complex. One of our participants has said it was the vocabulary that was a problem. Too complex. Students got distracted easily, which I find is a problem when they are not really connected to the story or to the reasons why they're reading a story. Anything else? Didn't know anything about the topic or the theme, which again goes back to students not being engaged, not paying attention, having a short attention span. So yes, that was me back when I was in school. It was not the first time and it was not the only time that I felt this way, but I still remember not really understanding why I was reading this book. And I will tell you, years later, I read some of the other stories that I had read that year. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was one book I remember. And I remember 4 or 5 years later that I was more understanding of it. I got into it more. I was more curious about the author and the time period. And I had only wished that my teacher had done that background, that pre-reading, those pre-reading activities to get me excited about what I was about to read. And I think even something I might not necessarily have been excited about, if she had put that excitement forth herself, I might have enjoyed the story a little bit more. All right, so as we move forward, there we go. So as you see that little picture, I'm bored, entertain me. Yes. How many of us have felt that in the classroom as a teacher standing in front of students? And it only gets more difficult, I think, when you are teaching, as you teach higher level students who almost demand to have their teachers entertain them throughout the day. So as I said, many students were disengaged when I was in school when we were reading stories. They learned but did not gain any perspective on why it was so important to be reading that story, okay? I remember learning how to write essays, but the teachers did not reach out to other learning styles. There were no other activities in which we got into groups, or we listened, or we discussed. It was all reading and writing. And again, that vocabulary, so much important vocabulary that I remember not really engaging or learning about. And I have a feeling I am not alone. Did anyone else on our panel here today, did you ever have this feeling? Do you remember a particular book or poem that, and it could have been when you were a younger grade or an older grade? Yeah, and don't you wish if you were that teacher you had some new strategies in which to help you? Yes, so thank goodness you have all tuned in today because we will be giving you 4 new strategies. So let us kind of move forward and we will give you time to let your opinion be known. So let us begin with the first poll question. How many of you use pre-reading activities in your classroom on a consistent basis? Always, 100% of the time. Often, over 75% of the time. Sometimes, 50% or less. And finally, what are pre-reading activities? So please take a moment to vote on which one you do the most.
Rob, it looks like 27% of your audience said always, 30% of it said often, 31% said sometimes, and 5% said, what are pre-reading strategies?
Very good. So it looks like, wouldn't we say that often and sometimes kind of lead the way in pre-reading activities? And from my experience, I would say we need to have more people saying always, and there's a reason for that. And one of the reasons is it will make your job as a teacher a lot easier. And again, this does not have to just be for English class. This could be for many different types of classes. It could be for many different kinds of students, beginners, intermediate, and even high-level students. I've used this with all different kinds of learners. I've seen some things online where a teacher's using it with a kindergarten class, first grade, second grade. So as we go throughout this webinar, I want you to be thinking about the things you learn and how you could possibly or definitely use these things in your class. So, all right, pre-reading activities. We like to call this the whys. Why do you need pre-reading activities? Okay, it's one way to get more students involved in the text is to use these activities. Again, your idea as a teacher is not to only call on the students who raise their hands all the time. You want to have all of your students engaged. You want to be calling on all of your students. You want to check with them, be constantly assessing where they are as they learn. So, some of the benefits. Giving background knowledge about the book, about the author, about the time period. I think I would have understood Wuthering Heights a little bit more had I understood more about the Bronte sisters and the time that they wrote in and why this book was so important, say, for a woman writer, or what was happening in social relations between men and women during that time period. That would have helped immensely when reading this book for me. It would have been helpful to also know what period it was. Was it the romantic period? Was it the realistic period? Again, that was not given to me. It made the book a little less interesting as I went along. Teaching difficult vocabulary. I think we all know that this is very important, and there's many ways of teaching vocabulary. It doesn't even have to be difficult. It can just be new vocabulary. But the teacher just cannot say, well, there's so many words here. I don't have time for all this. Teacher needs to go out of her or his way to make sure the students are using vocabulary, new vocabulary on a consistent basis. Activating prior knowledge. Again, the story takes on a whole new dimension. The poem takes on a whole new dimension when suddenly students are saying, oh, that has a connection to my life. Oh, I remember seeing a television program like that many years ago. Oh, there was a movie that I saw that reminds me of this story. So activate your students' prior knowledge. You'd be surprised what they already know. Supplying interesting details that make the students want to read. Make it like a movie or a television show where they have to wait till what happens next. Sorry, kids, we're going to have to wait till tomorrow to find out what happens. Have your students wanting to read that book more at home without you being. Do we have any other additional ideas on why we use pre-reading activities? Please, if anyone who has an idea, please quickly write down a response and we will try to read some of those off. So do we have any new exciting ideas?
Yes, Richard says environment games maybe. And then Jessica says to motivate students with the activity.
And so motivation seems to be anything that will motivate them, and I believe it could be about the environment. I think, again, if you're doing a story about the environment, that's where it would be the better connection.
Prediction also works, Robert states.
Yes, we will be talking about predictions coming up very soon. Predictions are great. One great reading strategy. And one more. Do we have one more?
Yes, to try a piece of the movie or a song related to the topic by Anna.
Yes, so you could add, you could show a little bit of a movie or a film, or you said a song, right? Or a song that connects in. All perfect ideas. Excellent job. Again, giving students some, activating their knowledge, getting their interest aroused. All right. Without further ado, let's start with our first activity. And I believe some of you might know this, but we're going to go over it anyway. It's called speed dating. For those of you who don't know, this technique started out as a non-teaching technique and as a way for people to know each other to date. And it follows a very specific set of rules, but it's now been used by teachers to help students at all angles of learning a new story or of learning in general. You could use it before reading, during reading, after reading. So this is not necessarily just for pre-reading, but it helps. So, speed dating. You place students in two even lines facing each other. The line should be, again, even. You don't want to have one extra person hanging off the end of the line. You ask a question. For example, who has a new baby brother or sister or a baby brother or sister in his or her family? Each student will talk to his or her partner. They have 1 minute to do this, and then they stop. The teacher will get them to stop. Please, everyone, look up at me. Ask partners to share their answers with the class. So if you have partner A and partner B, have partner A share what partner B said, and then vice versa. Maybe ask for every question, ask 2 or 3 sets of partners their answers. You don't want to ask everyone, as it will take too much time. Next, you ask one line to move down one place while the other line stays in place where it is. Therefore, everyone will have a new partner. So you have line A and line B. After the first question's asked and the answers have been checked, you say, okay, line B, please move down one space. They move down. Person at the end of the line moves to the beginning of the line. Everybody has a new partner. Everybody talks. Ask a new question and then repeat the process. Ask pairs to share out. In this way, for example, if you're reading to lower level students and you're reading a book about a mother and a father bringing a new baby home, you've already asked that question before they've read the book. How did it feel having a new brother or sister in the family? You might find some students very excited. Oh, I was so happy. You might have some students saying, I was very upset because my parents didn't talk to me as much as they used to. Very good questions to get students already connected before you have even introduced the story to them. At this point, they might not even know the name of the story or that they're even going to be reading a book. Make sure, most important, that the questions are connected to the lesson. Please do not ask a question about their favorite fruit if you're not doing a lesson on fruits and vegetables. Make sure that they're going to be able to connect into this later and that they'll remember you doing this when they're already reading the story. And this is just a picture of the process. I don't have any video, but you can look it up online. As you can see, there are two groups, two lines of students, and they're talking to each other. One line will move and the other will not. So now is the time for you to share with us. How could you use this in your classroom? Let's take an answer or two. So how could you use this in your lessons this year, at this moment, at this time? Let's give you 11 seconds. I give you one extra. You think that was enough time, Lisa?
Yes, we're getting lots of responses.
Okay.
Someone said to activate schema. Oh, they're coming in, firing in like crazy right now.
I love that. You activate some schema. Love that word. I haven't heard that one for a while. Excellent for the person who shared that. Anyone else?
To talk about characters.
Yes, you could talk about a character or introduce the students to character's motivation. Very good.
And reading won't be boring any longer if you do this.
Yes, well, I can't guarantee reading will not be boring, but it will definitely cut down the possibility that it will be boring. Okay, let's do one more. Why not? Where you guys are some very good answers coming in. Thank you.
Someone, Maria says, in my case, I have 30 students, and this will be really great for me to try.
Yeah, Maria, that's really good. It's very hard, and I think many of us feel that way too when you have 30. I had 36 students one time. That is a good way to get everybody involved and to control kind of classroom behavior, make sure everyone's speaking and no one's just sitting down and not paying attention.
And I have to make a correction. I'm sorry, Kimberly. That was Kimberly that stated that. My screen's moving so fast that names got switched up. So Kimberly, great question.
Okay, Kimberly, yes, thank you very much. And that's just a great way. Again, as a language teacher, even as a non-language teacher, you want all students to be involved. And as they stand there talking to each other, it's good for new learners or reluctant learners because they're not talking to the whole class. They're only talking to one person. And so that makes it a lot easier. All right, let's move on to the next activity. Party time. This is, as you can see, two types of parties. We have the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. Kind of tea is usually supposed to be very social and very dignified, but that is not, in this one, the most dignified of tea parties, I would say. And then we have the old cocktail party there, people outside having some drinks on the nice spring or summer night. Different kind of party, but a party nonetheless. Okay, so question. What do people do at a party? So please, we'll give you 10 seconds. What do you do when you're at a party? Give us your answers, please. Lisa, do we have any answers for party time?
Oh my gosh, we have great answers. Some of them are we talk, we make new friends, we get to know each other, we dance and have fun, and tons more activities.
Yeah, that all sounds very good. Great answers. Those all sound very social, don't they? talking to each other. Even dancing is a communicative activity. You're in many different ways communicating with other people. Get to know each other, talk, dance, have a good time. Yeah, so this is kind of an activity where it's somewhat similar. I mean, you're not really going to have tea with your students. It's called a tea party because students get up and they mingle. It's where they get up and they discuss different parts of the upcoming story. And this is, I'll run down the different steps and then I'll show you an example if our handouts are ready. First thing, you get the students into groups and each student gets a note card or a piece of paper, a square paper, with a unique sentence taken from the story. Now remember, they haven't read the story, they might not even know the name of the story, but everyone will get a sentence, a quotation, something directly from the story. Everyone has a different sentence. You ask the students to stand up, and for 3 minutes they must walk around the classroom and they must read their sentence to as many other students as possible. Don't have them hand their sentence to another student. They read it and the other students reads theirs, and then they move on to the next person, and you want to see how many people they can talk to in 3 minutes or 2 minutes, whatever time you want to set. I think we're getting the hint, the idea that you want everyone communicating. Next, you call time. Students, please sit in your original groups and tell everyone in the group at least one new sentence that you heard. So students have to listen and they have to remember. Next, as a group, they must write a paragraph incorporating at least 4 sentences that they have heard on their own, from their own group, and from around the classroom to try to figure out what the story is about. And to make sure everyone does something, every student must write a sentence, even if they get help from somebody else. Let's see. So, let me actually, before I share, let me show you the handout so you can see what the handout looks like. This comes from the story Sadako and 1,000 Paper Cranes. It's a famous Japanese story about the young girl who, very sad, got cancer because of the atomic bomb. Years later, she tries to make these 1,000 paper cranes and have her dream come true of being healed. I will not give away the story, but you need a box of Kleenex when you read it. I use this in my class, and as you can see, hopefully everyone can see the little squares, and all of these are sentences or quotations directly from the story. As you can see, I have at least one for every student. I had many students in that classroom, and this is the first thing we did in, I believe, 2 days of pre-reading activities. Pre-reading for me was more than 1 day. All right, so let's go back to our presentation. All right, so what are the benefits and what do your students get from doing this exercise? Do you feel this would work in your classes? So there's 2 questions here, and we'd like to get some responses, please. Okay, seems like we have a lot of responses. Yes, Lisa?
Jessica says that students get to share ideas, and Carlos says definitely yes, it would work. Gladys says they become very motivated to read. Yesenia says yes, it's a good idea to promote the concentration. Others say, of course it works. It would be most dynamic in my class, according to Rosemary.
Dynamic, and I think that's great. Was that Rosemary who said that? I think dynamic is a good word because that's what language is about. That's what communication is about. It's not just sitting down reading a story all by yourself, although that's fine too. So yes, it's the benefits, I say, are immense because you have students, everyone's participating, everyone's reading, everyone's listening, people are working together, and they're already formulating ideas about what they think the story might be about. And again, it's like with all teaching, you might not get the benefits right away, and your students might not get the benefits right away, but halfway through the story, students will say, oh, I remember reading that. Oh, that was my card. I read that the first day. Students do this all the time. I've used this many times with many different stories. All right, we're moving on. We've got a couple more activities, and then we're going to open this up to questions. So hang in there. I hope everyone's doing all right. So, anticipating. what will happen next? So we can see the gentleman holding his head. Oh, I didn't see that coming. As we know, a habit of good readers is anticipating. Now, Lisa, I don't know about you, when you read a book or when you watch a movie for the first time, read a book for the first time, watch a movie for the first time, as the movie's going along or the book's going along, what's happening in your brain?
I'm constantly predicting and thinking about what's going to happen next because I know good readers do that.
Yeah, do you plan to predict?
No, it just happens naturally.
Yeah, and I think we all do it whether we're aware of it or not. And one of the things I've done as an ESL teacher, I've tried to make students aware of this anticipating. This is one of my activities I did all the time. And so we need something to help students anticipate what might happen next in the story. Are they right? Maybe. If not, maybe not. That's fine, but it's okay if they're wrong. Get the ideas flowing. So this is called an anticipatory guide. An anticipatory guide is a series of statements that relate to the story. And I will put this up in just a minute. You have a before reading box where students mark agree or disagree. So there'll be a statement and it'll say before reading. Students just check agree or disagree. They compare answers with a partner. They discuss it. Next, you read out the questions or the statements to the class. You have people raise their hand. Who agrees with the statement? Who disagrees? You'll be amazed how this opens debate among students in the classroom. I've used it almost with every story. Sometimes I can't even finish the lesson because the students keep wanting to debate the point. Students get into groups of 4, again, and they use these sentences to determine what they think the story is about. After reading the anticipatory guide, we think the story is about, and they give 2 or 3 sentences using the anticipatory sentences. After you collect the papers, after reading the stories, you hand the paper back. The students read the statements again, and they go to the after reading box, and they check either agree or disagree. And the idea is you want to see the students, after they've read the story, whether they changed their mind, whether that information from the story got them to think differently about the initial statements. And let's open that. Let's take a look at what one of these anticipatory guides would look like. And I made one for Little Red Riding Hood. All right. This is anticipatory guide for Little Red Riding Hood. And you have the directions at the top. And as you go down, there's your question. A child should always listen to his or her mother. Again, these should be questions where the students have to really think about whether they agree or disagree. It should not be a simple answer. This is the pre-reading. After you collect it, and after the story is over and you hand the papers back, they agree or disagree again, and then give evidence for the story. That way, they can see whether the statement matches up when they're finished, and they might be surprised that something they thought before, they think differently after. You know, you should help a stranger who asks for your help. Again, that could be a question that goes either way. Good thing to get kids to think about. That's the anticipatory guide. All right, and this is called, well, what's going to be called novel ideas only. But we have one more question for you here. What is a novel or something that is novel? Can you please give your answers right now? What is a novel or what is something novel? So, Lisa, do we have any answers? What is a novel or what is something novel?
Yeah, the interesting thing is we have a couple people who have said they've never seen this word before or not sure what this word is.
Good to know.
We have some people that say this is something new. Someone else said it's an innovation. One said when you're talking about novel, the book, it's a story. Others said one is a noun, one is an adjective.
Yes. Yep, and I'm glad some people don't know because this is really good. So novel, of course, is a story, a long story, like Wuthering Heights is a novel, big book, right? Something novel is like a new idea, like the light bulb was a novel idea, as you can see the light bulb right there. So something that's novel is two things. It's either a noun, it's a book, a story, or it is an adjective, novel, something new. And in this case, you're using both words as a pre-reading activity. So this will be novel to many of you today. Okay, novel ideas only. Okay, you have students in groups of 4 or 5. You write the name of a new story on the board. So for example, I'll give you the name of the story, On the Road. We'll go back to that in a minute. As a group, the students must generate ideas about the plot of the story. Just from the title, what do they think the story will be about? You have 3 minutes, or they have 3 minutes, and they pass the paper, one paper, around in a circle. Each student writes what they think the story is about. And the idea is to generate as many ideas as possible. They can be the craziest ideas you can think of. Doesn't matter. It can be nonsense. We think this story is about. Let them go. Let them use their imagination. After 3 minutes, call time. Ask the students to count how many ideas that they have on their paper. Okay. Next part, you ask one group to read all of their ideas. If they have 10 ideas, they read all 10. Everyone reads in the group. They pass it around. Everyone reads until they're done. The other groups listen. They do not interrupt. Okay, next. The next group will read their answer, but they cannot repeat an idea that they've already heard. They can only read new ideas. No repeating answers. If a group repeats an answer, the class yells out, novel ideas only. And this is great because it gets students to use their ideas, their imagination, but it also gets them to listen when other groups are speaking. So they can't repeat something, and they love yelling at other people, novel ideas only. So, example. We have a couple minutes, so let's just very quickly. So this is what they would have on their paper. We think the story On the Road is about, and we want you to do that right now. Maybe some of you know this story already, but if you just saw that on the board, what would you write for your sentence? Lisa,
All right.
What do we got?
We think the story On the Road is about a motorcycle story. We think the story On the Road is about 2 walkers. We think the story On the Road is about cars. We think the story On the Road is about a trip to the beach. We think the story On the Road is about young people on a journey.
Great, all great ideas. And
this is a great group. They are participating like crazy.
Yeah, and I wrote some examples. We think the story is about a man and his dog as they travel across Peru on a motorcycle. We think the story is about a man taking a vacation to Disneyland and all the strange things that the family sees. We think this story is about a woman who helps build roads through the mountains so medicine can be delivered to a remote village. Anything, whatever the students' ideas are, whatever language they can write down on paper, it's great. It doesn't have to necessarily be the actual plot of the story, but that gets them thinking in the right direction. All right, very well done. So now as we get to the end, before you ask any question, we have some questions for you. In which grade levels can these activities be used and why? And we'll check with the big boss. What do we got, Lisa?
Well, we have such a range of answers. We have Maria who says all levels. Laity says secondary. Claudia says any level. Some people say the basic level, the pre-intermediate. We're all over the board on this one.
As well you should be. So these techniques can be used with any level. And, you know, maybe with younger students they can't write, but they can tell you ideas that they have. This story is about, okay, they can do the cat in the hat, whatever it might be. They can come up with something. So you can tailor this to whatever group. Very good answers. As we kind of get to the end of this, I want you to be thinking about why you do not use pre-reading activities all the time. What are some pre-reading activities? Why don't we ask that very quickly? I've been doing most of the talking, so what are pre-reading activities that you have used in your class? Again, just 10 seconds. If there's anything that we've used, that we've shown you today that you've used, or something you've done that we haven't mentioned. And we'll see. What do we got, Lisa?
We've got using the title to infer or make predictions. We've got
Good.
jigsaw reading.
Good.
We've got KWL. We've got using images from the book.
Great.
And pre-teaching vocabulary, and many more. This group does a lot of activities.
Great. Oh, those are all good. I think most people do know the KWL. I know I've seen other teachers do images. I've used images as well, even just from the cover of the book. And the jigsaw is really good. I like jigsaw reading. So you all out there have used quite a few activities, and that really is great. And I'm hoping that the things that I've been giving you today will be very helpful, or you can use as a variation on what you do. And again, you don't have to answer this question, but I want you to think about, this is not just for English class. This could be used in Spanish class, science, history. You can use some of these techniques in many different ways. So don't confine it just to stories. You can change these around to make it work in many different circumstances, as well you should. All right, so it's now time. I've talked quite a bit, and I want to thank you for indulging me. This is the first time I've done this. There's been some hiccups here, but I think we're doing okay. And as we say, we'll do better next time, to steal a line from somebody else. But now is your turn to write in questions. Anything that's on your mind, anything you want to share, anything you want to ask for the next 10 or 12 minutes. So I'll give you time to write, and then we will answer.
Okay, I'm here. There's a question from Joel. Which are good book titles that you would recommend for pre-intermediate students?
Ooh, that's a good question. Again, I'm still at the moment not familiar with the curriculum down here in Peru. I'm not sure what you read, and by what level was it again? Ooh, I think I'd need a little more information on that. I'm sorry, I don't have that answer, but we can research that for you.
I have one. What are some good pre-reading strategies for beginners?
Beginners. Again, I like the idea of something that gets them talking. So any variation on like the speed dating or some sort of partner work where they have to discuss something with each other. A question, it might even just be whatever words they know. It could be various words or their favorite, whatever it might be.
This is really a good one. What about mixed ability classes? Can you prepare different pre-reading activities for them to perform at the same time?
You could, but I would say you want everybody on the same page. What you might do in the like you might partner people up. So if you have some students who have difficulty reading during, say, the tea party, they could partner with a stronger student and they could go as pairs, and one can read and then the other could read and they could help each other. So I think that would be one way. Yes.
For large classes, 35 to 40 students, can we do the tea party activity?
Yeah, you can do the tea party. I mean, it's for basically just about any number, I would say. That would be all depending on how large a space you had. You need enough space where people can walk around. You need to make sure that the desks are a certain order, and you need to make sure that people listen to you. So for there, you might need better classroom management skills to keep people's attention.
All right, the other one is how to engage when the lesson is online. I think that's what they're asking.
Well, I mean, as you could see here, if you're doing an online lesson, you could plan it several ways. It depends on if students are watching the lesson or interacting with the lesson on their own with their own computer, or they're working as a group of students, and that way they could do a group activity if there's like 4 or 5 working at one computer or connected in together. What else can you, as you could see even today, I was asking you a series of questions as well, where students had to send in their responses. And again, I think for the novel ideas only, you could kind of do it online. It'd be a little more difficult, but it'd have to be a typing activity, obviously, and you'd have to find a way to monitor it somehow.
What is an appropriate time for the Tea Party activity, to follow up with the other question? What is an appropriate length of time for the Tea Party activity?
Okay, very good. Okay, I would say probably altogether with asking the question, getting the students up and walking, and then they're going to be doing the writing. This could be up to 10 to 15 minutes. You don't want it to take up all of the class, or maybe the walking around part, like I said, 2 or 3 minutes. The discussing, you could possibly make it a full 30, 40-minute class by breaking up the Tea Party into various sections.
And then this question I'm going to just field for you, and it's kind of a segue. Do you happen to have any strategies to teach vocabulary in a novel? And that will be next month's webinar, so stay tuned for that. And then another question for you is, can we use these techniques at higher levels? Of
course you can. Yeah, I've done it with higher level age-wise, and you know, with older students, and higher levels as well, of course, especially the anticipatory guide, because then you can get, you know, more complex answers, like, you know, always listen to your parents. Well, gee, what if my mom always is a liar and she's never told the truth? Then you probably don't want to listen to your parents. You're going to get a lot of answers. You're going to get more complex answers at a higher level. And I think also when you go back to the vocabulary, I used to do something called, maybe you're going to be, have you done round robin? Okay, maybe you'll discuss that in future time. But yes, you can also do it for vocabulary as well. How do I evaluate reading? Well, that's a big question. It depends on the level of the students, whether I'm evaluating them for an exam or whether I'm evaluating them one-on-one. I think at least with these exercises, we just want students to be able to begin communication. And again, you can use this with it all. You can use these at all levels, but I've used these with, you know, mixed groups. And I've seen students who were afraid to talk begin to talk when they are in pairs or in a small group, or when they have a paper with an easy sentence that they can repeat and practice and learn, or they can do something simple like agree or disagree.
Someone wanted you to recap the titles of the 4 activities, so if you can just restate those for them.
Yeah, so the first one is speed dating. The second one is anticipatory guide. The next one is novel ideas only, and the Tea Party.
Are we able to use speed dating techniques with all levels we have, for example, in a class of 6 people?
Yeah, why not? It might go a little quicker, and you might have to modify it. It'd be it'd be 3 and 3, but it gets everyone, or no, 6 people. Yeah, 3 and 3. You know, you would probably ask more questions. Maybe you would set the timer a little more quickly, so they would have 30 seconds to talk. Maybe you could then turn into a fishbowl activity. So of course you could, as long as you have an even number, it just might go a little quicker, and you'd have to plan accordingly.
How much time should pre-reading activities last?
It depends. I mean, again, I think at times before I would start a more complicated story, I would definitely do at least one class prior to reading, do a pre-reading activity, like have the class be all about the pre-reading. Sometimes that class might be 2 activities, or some days I would do, I don't think I've ever done 3 pre-reading activities on one day, but I've maybe done 2 on one day, then 1 the next, and then began the story on the second day. So you can break it up any way you feel. You just don't want to make it be maybe 10 pre-reading activities. That's too many. I'd say no more than 3, and some of them should be very short. One of them should be maybe more complex, and that should be like the highlight. Like the anticipatory guides I find are really good, especially with the intermediate and higher level students. They really remember those and they like to go back. And again, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, I've seen a big change in my students when it came to these guides. And they, by the time the year ends, nothing more they'd like to do than argue with each other on agreeing or disagreeing on some of these great sentences. All right, so I think we are now at the end. Okay, as we're ending, we're running low on time. We have one more poll for you before we finish up. How many of you will go back to your classroom and try one of these strategies, two of these strategies, three of these strategies, or all of these strategies? Please vote now. So do we have the final results?
Oh my gosh, 53% said they're going to use all of these strategies. Wow, you guys are an energetic and eager group. 27% said 2 of them, 19% said 3 of them. So way to go.
Good. So I don't want you folks just to say you're going to use them. I really want you to think about using them and actually make concrete plans to put them into your lesson plans in the coming days. All right. And thank you for joining us for today. Next month, you can check out Lisa Wakefield, who's right next to me.
Ooh, the bar's been set high for me.
And she will be here, like I am, in Lima. She'll be teaching interactive vocabulary strategies, November 29th. Please, it's the 29th, November 29th. And from the same time, 15 to 1600 hours. If you want to check out more information on us, here's some of our web addresses, RELO Andes. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and we have our email address right there, and you have my email address from the beginning. So I hope you will tune in next month. I hope you got something out of this today. I'd like to hear from more of you and how these things worked in your class. And I think go home tonight, listen to some Fats Domino music to remember the great man who passed away today. So a little cultural exercise for you as well.
Buenas tardes from the embassy.
Deep down inside the bunker, deep in the embassy. Thank you very much for tuning in this week. We'll talk to you soon. We are outie.
Have a great evening, everyone.